Welcome to English with Frazer, the weekly podcast for intermediate English learners who are serious about improving. Whether you're brushing up or building your confidence, join me each week for real conversations, smart tips, and the touch of that British charm. Let's level up your English one episode at a time. Hello and welcome back to English with Frazer, the podcast where we make English effortless, one episode at a time. Now, today's topic is something we all do, and do fairly often. That's giving opinions, but we're doing it in the British way. Because, let's be honest, Brits don't always say exactly what they think. We soften, we hedge, we use little expressions to make us sound polite, modest, or sometimes even a bit cheeky. So in this episode, I'll walk you through how to give opinions naturally in British English, agree and disagree politely, use those subtle hedging phrases, and sound more like a native speaker in casual conversations. Part 1. Direct versus indirect opinions. So let's start with something important. In many cultures, it's fine to say exactly what you think. I don't like this. You're wrong. That's a bad idea. But in British English, we often avoid sounding too direct. Instead of saying, "That is a terrible film," we might say, "I wasn't too keen on it, to be honest." Or you could even use a British expression and say, "It's not really my cup of tea," which means I don't really like it. These little phrases make your opinion sound softer and more diplomatic. Very useful in conversation. So when thinking about how Brits really express opinions, just imagine that you're always trying to avoid sounding too strong or too blunt, especially when giving personal opinions. It's not that we don't have opinions. We certainly do, but we prefer to wrap them in softening language. Think of it as putting bubble wrap around your words. So instead of saying, "The film was so boring," you can say, "I wasn't completely sold on it. I thought the pacing was a bit slow." Or, "It dragged on a bit too much for my liking." See how it sounds less harsh? We also love to use phrases that make the opinion sound personal and humble, even if we feel strongly. Try repeating these. "Personally, I thought it was brilliant. In my view, it could have been a bit shorter. I might be wrong, but I really enjoyed it." And another one you can say is, "I'm no expert, but I thought it was good." You're sort of playing down your own opinion. You're giving your opinion, but you're saying, if you don't agree, then it's okay. I am not the expert. And another good tip is always start with something positive, even if you're about to say something negative after. "I liked the first half, but the ending, it wasn't my cup of tea. I appreciate you spent a lot of time baking that cake, but it was just a bit too sweet." And if we go the other way and want to completely disagree, then you can say, "I see what you're saying, but I'm not entirely convinced." This helps us keep things friendly, even when we don't quite agree with the listener. Think about your tone and add a little bit of softening language, so you can say it in a more polite and quieter tone. "If I'm being completely honest, it wasn't great." That's better than saying, "I thought it was crap." Keep it calm, keep it kind, and keep it British. Let's continue. Part 2. Useful phrases for giving opinions. Here are some classical British ways to give an opinion. Starting from neutral, then moving slowly stronger and more emotional. I think. I'd say. It seems to me. In my opinion. If you ask me. Let's give some examples. I think the new tariffs are slightly crazy. I'd say it's his best work to date. It seems to me that you've not actually read the report, have you? In my opinion, we should just go straight to town. If you ask me, I'd probably disagree with you. I'd say that's a bit overpriced, if I'm being honest. You could also say a more soft approach to your opinion. I'm not sure I agree with that. That might be true, but to be fair, I see where you're coming from, but these soft opinions, you want to disagree with someone, but almost not hurt their feelings. You don't want to argue or appear confrontational. I see where you're coming from, but actually, in Q1, our sales were pretty good. To be fair, I know what you mean, but this time I'm going to have to disagree. I'm not sure I agree with that, although it's good work. Now you can also express stronger opinions, but still be polite. I strongly believe. I have to say, I really disagree with that. To be honest with you, let's be real. For example, you could say, I strongly believe this is the direction the company should go in. I have to say, I really disagree with that, although I respect your ideas. Let's be real, it's not the greatest idea in the world. Part 3. Agreeing and still sounding polite. If you want to sound more native, you don't want to say yes or no all the time. Sometimes you want to express greater feeling, greater agreement than just saying yes. So how would you go about that? You could say, absolutely. Yes, I absolutely agree. Too right. Yes, that's too right, which just means 100% yes. I couldn't agree more. Spot on. Now this one's incredibly British. If you said spot on, it means I agree. Yes, spot on. I completely agree. Now, if you want to say no, but again want to sound more polite and don't want to just say no because it's quite a boring word, you could disagree in these ways. I'm not so sure about that. I see your point, but that's one way of looking at it, which is to say, your opinion is different from mine and I don't agree with you. That's one way of looking at it. I wouldn't quite say that, to be honest, or I wouldn't quite phrase it that way. That means what you said I don't agree with, but I'm going to politely disagree. Or you could even say, we will have to agree to disagree. This means we have different opinions, so we're going to agree that we're not going to come to an agreement. So we agree to disagree. That one can be quite hard to understand and wrap your head around. Or my personal favourite, you can say, that's interesting. So literally, if something is interesting, it means you like it, you want to know more. But in this context, you could say, that's interesting. It means I think you're wrong, but I'm being polite about it. I'm being civil. I completely disagree, but I'll let you have your moment. Part 4. Let's hear a short conversation between me and my good old chap Winston, giving our opinions on some classic British foods. So Winston, what's your take on black pudding?
I'd say it's an acquired taste. Not quite my cup of tea, but I respect it.
Fair enough. Personally, I think it is pretty tasty, especially in a full English breakfast.
It's not bad, but to be honest, I'd rather have a crumpet and a bit of jam. But each to their own.
Notice how at each point me and Winston never actually agreed with each other. I asked him about black pudding. He said he didn't really like it. I then disagreed with him and said I like it a lot. And he again disagreed and presented a different opinion. He would prefer a crumpet. But as you can tell, it's very polite. We're kind of beating around the bush, not trying to antagonize the other. We're not trying to be too opinionated. We're just giving our opinions politely. And that's key to British conversations. Similar to the previous episode I did on being subtle, British English is all about that subtlety and finding the balance when we're speaking with each other. Alright, it's time for a quick bit of practice to see if you understood and see how much you remember before we conclude the episode. I'll read a short sentence or situation and you have to think of what a polite British response would be to give your opinion. Question 1. You didn't enjoy a film, but your friend really loved the film. What could you say? I can see why you liked it, but it wasn't really my cup of tea. Question 2. You think someone's idea at work is unrealistic, but you don't want to sound rude. What might you say? I see where you're coming from, but maybe we could try something simpler. Question 3. You strongly agree with someone's opinion on tea being better than coffee, of course. What could you say? Absolutely. Spot on. Couldn't agree more. Right, if you came up with something similar to that, then I think you've all passed with flying colours. Remember, it's not just what you say in English, but it's how you say it. We value balance, modesty, and a touch of charm. So go out there and give your opinions, but this time with some British style. That's a wrap on today's episode of English with Frazer. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new. Remember, mastering English is all about immersing yourself in natural content. After all, we're making English effortless, one episode at a time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Keep going. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and most importantly, share with a friend, family member, or colleague who also may be learning English. I'll be back soon with more natural English content. Until then, keep practicing, listening, and enjoy the journey. Bye for now.